wanted to ask you this since you brought up the youth sports thing, right? And at the top of my list and everything that I was thinking about when I saw this book was what are your opinions on um like you spoke a lot about being a father in managing kids in youth sports. What are your opinions on the Sanders family, the Ball family, the Brown family that's put out? It's been a lot of men being with their sons and watching them, like make this generational turnover from the NFL to the NBA to across the spectrum. How do you feel about that whole change? And you're really participating in it now.
I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
anytime you have a father involved in his kid, that's a wonderful thing. I think some guys are a little bit more flamboyant with it, a little louder, a little more,
Hmm.
a little more shiny.
Yeah.
So some are more, but there are just as many parents who are providing that same level of support that you never hear about.
Right.
So I'm all for it. A parent can never be too supportive of their kids. So do what you got to do. And if you get two or three kids in the NBA or a couple kids in the NFL, you already winning.
Yeah. Well, yes. Hey, because like what I'm watching in my point of view, narratives are dying now. Like this whole narrative the that the person that's getting drafted is coming from like this, like this bastion of a situation where the parents aren't there. They
Right.
got like that Michael Orr blindside type of
Right.
situation. That narrative is like dying, because you're starting to see more both parents be involved
Right.
in the draft and the process. You're starting to see generational talent starting to come out, and I think that we're in the middle of a great wave of like mature men having conversations about this is what we produce, in
Right.
general. This is the mindset you're passing on your mindset. That's like
Right.
the real inheritance, I think.
Right.
So
I mean,
what you what
I
you've
gotta,
been
I gotta,
doing
I
is
gotta,
that.
I can add something to that.
Go
I
ahead.
think,
Yeah.
I think a part of that is um, not just a mindset. I think one society is having to accept something that for years they say we didn't do. Black men don't support their kids. Black men don't do this. Black men don't do that. So now every time you turn on the TV, you see a kid and his dad. His kid and his dad. Kid and his dad. And now they have a problem with that.
Hmm.
Now, why is his father there? Why is his father? It's all that.
Yeah.
So you really can't win for losing.
Can't wait for losing.
You can't win for losing. So I say be there and show out because that's that they want you to be there. You've earned it. They've earned it. So be there and show out. So society is always gonna try to present us as less than what we are. So we just have to keep challenging that narrative, and let them eat it.
Yeah. Can't please everybody.
No, you don't have
You
to
never
please any
will.
of them.
You
The
don't
only
have to
people you
please
have to
anybody.
please are the ones in your house.
No, come on. Yeah, like I say all the time, I don't have to the only people I have to be concerned about are the people that respect me. That's
Right.
it. Everybody else, nobody else matters.
No.
Like because being like-minded is sharing, like mutual respect for one another also in
Right.
general. The
And
minute that they get
celebrating
out
each
there,
other's wins.
it's exactly, that's it. So yeah, I definitely wanted to bring that up and see how you thought about it because like when you're in the trenches with this stuff, nobody really sees all of the work that gets put in, all of the mentorship and everything else. Because I think you embody what I believe fathers should be.
Right.
Because there's a part where you go from like the parent and nurturer, what I'm saying, like trying to herd cats is what we used to say
Right.
in the military, right?
Right.
To, getting them to adhere to discipline, order, and structure so they start working on autopilot. They don't need you to do every
Right.
single thing. So they can be autonomous and still be responsible at the same time. But you also don't want to burn the bridge with them emotionally so you can remain the primary mentor in their life if they need to talk to
Right.
somebody, outside of the regular course of business, outside of what they want to do. So there's a lot of implied self work that needs to happen in order for you to be effective that way.
Right.
And I think that when you start writing books, that's you actually releasing all of the negativity because you're making it make sense and you're making it come back to you in a positive way.
Oh, it's
So
therapy. It's therapeutic.
it is therapeutic. Yeah, it is therapeutic. So like like I'm an author myself. So when I started discovering how much more effective it was in lieu of therapy, well, in addition to it just adds more context to how you think, because you're really testing your brain power to stay consistent and complete something. That's really what it is. It shows what you care about, and if you care about letting um, turning that story into something that other people could benefit from, it adds value to your life, man. So
I agree.
uh,
I
let
agree.
me get to the comments. Okay.
Sure.
uh, Herbert Lewis says parents are the template for what kids learn and are taught.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep. So, you got anything else you want to add
And
to
that's
that?
both good and bad.
It's both good
So
and bad. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so
why.
you want that template to be something that that's a positive for them, that they can take into the world, and be
Right.
positive.
So as men that have similar professions, right? I've all one of the things you have to accept in the intelligence field is that both sides exist,
Yep.
the good and the bad, and they're both good and bad for
Your
reasons.
perspective.
Exactly right. So I I started doing all of my last book that I wrote, Accountable Masculinity, which
Okay.
is what we talk about. Hey, go get the book. I'm gonna plug my book too. So um, I started I started dissecting conversations that I would see on social media involving gender conflict, because I've been studying conflict the last 22 years. So I can't turn that part of my brain off. It interests me. I like to know why things started,
Right.
and what's the source of it. Because why things started and the source of it is not the same thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So the source is is based on the conditioning of the people that participate in the activity. Why are these people in constant conflict with one another, right? So in a gender war conversation, you're going to have people with similar outcomes always in conflict with each other. People that have positive outcomes with similar results have a different upbringing also. So the two-parent home people are more likely to reproduce with people from two-parent homes.
Right.
There's going to be some exceptions, but by and large, the same thing applies to the single-parent home folks. So if you get two people born, raised in single-parent homes without models for a father, you're going to have eternal conflict until both people accept that they've been raised without fathers. Because a man raised without a father is has got the same emotional discipline on a lot of levels as a woman raised without a father.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been trying to figure out why their relationships do and do not work, and that conversation gets presented to them. They realize that the best relationship that they probably fumbled came from somebody telling them what to do because they hadn't been told what to do, and they're like, man, because they didn't see being told what to do as correction and love. They saw it as control and
Right.
manipulation. So that variable has a big play in the thing. So yeah, parents are definitely the template for what kids learn and talk, because they take that into their other relationships.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, Herbert, for that. Yeah, that question. Uh, I think he was talking about single fatherhood. He said it's seen as an unnatural role for men to feel alone. When you were talking about, hey, I'm just a dad, I'm just taking care of my kids like I was supposed to. They're mine. So they see single fathers as I guess exceptions. What do you think about that?
Well, you see it a lot. You see it a lot more now. Because a lot of courts that who would traditionally would not give a man an opportunity, are starting to open up to fathers. So you see a lot more, and then you see a lot more men who are willing to fight the fight. Who are asking for more. And like I talk about in my book, even if you aren't built for full custody, you can have more visitation with your kids. Your kids need as much time with you as you can get. So it's how you present yourself, to these courts,
Mm-hmm.
because and you have to have a plan, you know, you have to have a
Yep.
plan. So if you walk into any court in the country nowadays, if you walk into the court and you have a plan spelled out on how you're going to spend this time and how it's going to be positive for your kids, more times than not, they're gonna go with it. they're going to give you that opportunity. But it's how you present yourself. You can't walk into a court and you have no idea where your kid goes to school at. You don't know any of their teachers. You don't know what their grades are. You don't really know anything about, their day-to-day life. Then how are you going to tell a judge that, hey, I want more time? So you have to be engaged, you have to be involved, and you have to, spend time getting to know and learn your kids, know your kids. So it's not foreign to you, you know.
Yeah. Let's see here. Do you think it was marrying too young or marry the incorrect person too young?
Well, usually when you're married too young, you don't know if it's the right person or not. I know people who got married when I went in the military. I mean, 19, they got married and they still married today. So you don't know. You hope that you're marrying somebody who is like-minded and you're growing together and you're going to go in the same in a direction where you both can grow and bloom together and you have kids and all of these things. Just and then the big party in the sky and everything goes well. That's what everybody wants. But for me, I knew I was young and immature. So
Mm,
that going into it, that was already a recipe for disaster.
gotcha.
So getting married for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
But if you're fine, if you're grounded and you're mature in who you are and you guys are mature together, then it can work. But if you're
Okay.
either one of you guys is immature and irresponsible, it's not going to work.
So, rule number one of accountable masculinity is men focus on men. Personal accountability standards amongst reasonable men without degrading women to improve our society. So, that's what you've been doing with your own self, the work that you've done on you, and you've instilled that into your kids. And I can see the how much further it's going to go, man. So, you get a round of applause on that one too. Um,
Appreciate it.
the the book itself is centered on this right here. Rule number two: you don't argue with women. So you've been using the court system to your advantage to help maintain your placement in your kid's life, so you can show up. And that's how you have to use the court system to mitigate this, because you're not going to get any progress but to help your kids by arguing with the woman that you made your kids with. So
Can I give you a quick story about that?
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so when I petitioned for custody of my kids before
Mm-hmm.
I was even divorced. So they've always been with me. So when she left the house, they were still with me. So when I went to court for the actual custody, I sit there for 45 minutes and hear all these negative things about me. Some of these things I'd never heard before. So I'm just sitting here taking this beating. Her and her lawyer or whatever. I'm by myself. I didn't even have a lawyer. So I took one of my best friends, Dave. He was there with me. He was my witness. So I sit here, I take all of this verbal abuse. The judge, my turn, the judge brings me up. He said, Mr. Melvin, what would you like to offer? And I told him, I said, well, I'm not here to disparage her because I need her to help me raise my sons. I just want the opportunity to be able to do that. And he said, you know what, Mr. Melvin, we're gonna give you that opportunity. The boys are gonna be with you. She'll get regular visitation, and then that's how it's gonna be. So we'll write the schedule up, we write the order, and that's how it's gonna be. I was up there 5 minutes, after sitting there going through all of this. So it's just about, presenting yourself. I had everything in place, make sure you have things in order. They were already in school, they were already doing all the things they had been doing. Their lifestyle never changed.
Yeah.
So that consistency was key to helping them get through it because it was hard for them, not having their mother in the house anymore, so it's hard for them,
Yeah.
so and like my oldest son, I put him in therapy for a while because he was the oldest, so he a little bit more about what was going on, so it was tougher for him. So he had some issues he wanted to talk to. He was a little angry, so part of it is recognizing when your kids need help, and understanding that it's not always going to be you that is the one that can help them. So sometimes they need to talk to somebody. So you need to understand when it's more than just, oh, they just mad because they didn't get a toy. Sometimes they really need to talk to somebody. So you have to identify that and get them those resources when they need them. So
All right, man. That's rule number three: decentralized leadership requires knowing when to lead and when to follow. Must avoid misrepresenting fellow men. Although we are not perfect, we must have redeeming efforts. That in itself is exactly what you just explained, beforehand. Because if you would have gone back and forth or done something to misrepresent yourself, you would have taken your opportunities away.
absolutely, no question. And that's what they expect.
That's
So
what
they
they
want to see
expect.
you. They want to see that side of you because that's what they expect. So when you don't give them that, now they're like, oh, this guy's different. So
Yeah,
now I have to treat him a different way.
that's how you
So
get your leverage back.
exactly.
So You're always working from the bottom up anyway.
Yep.
Rule number 4, legacy and equity. Live a life of service towards your community and others. You must be credible and capable of both mentoring and being mentored. You must be receptive and coachable. I think that you've nailed all of this right here. You know,
I
you
think I'm doing pretty good so far.
yeah, you're doing real good, man. Hey, if this is the opportunity, like you like, hey, you left something out. This is the time to say it, But I think that you went across every single one of these things that's listed, and this is a short version of it too. But the longer criteria, you nailed that down too.
That's what's up.
Uh,
That's good stuff.
yeah. And
That's
men
good
must
stuff.
exercise sexual discipline to be seen as credible leaders and maximize their opportunities. The way you described your dating preferences and your practices and making decisions that put your sons in front of your immediate romantic needs and social needs. That's what sexual discipline is. Not just because you could, like you said, you made a distinction between what would be short term and long term fulfillment.
Absolutely.
And you didn't put your kids on the back burner for a short term fulfillment.
Exactly.
So because man, emotions will get people in a lifetime worth of hurt for saying for 4 or 5 pumps.
Exactly.
So and I think that is a testament to like how much more disciplined sexually men are than what we get credit for too. So you understood the severity, what was on the line, you had something to lose, and you made the right decisions and the right choices, man. So as simple as it sounds, if we don't talk about this, nobody knows that we actually think like this,
Right.
because I think part of the reason why men get dumped into such negative conversations is we're just quiet. Because when you're disciplined and you mind your business, you don't feel a need to go advertise, hey, I'm minding my business. That's like dumb. You know what I'm saying? So but with social media and the way that we communicate today, we're we're almost doing ourselves a disservice by not having public conversations.
Right.
Because if you don't speak, somebody else is writing the narrative and controlling the narrative to demonize you and just your image.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
all of that amounts to this last acronym that I came up with. This is what you avoid when you follow rule number 5: sudden, sexually undisciplined dating decisions ending negatively. You have
No,
done
no
a great
question.
job in avoiding all of this.
Oh, no question. That's
So
important. That's important for everybody. That's why not having that self-discipline is why there's so many kids out here, running the streets and, knocking people over the head, is because they're emotional, they're undisciplined, and they
mhm.
don't have leadership. So that's what society is fighting against, and that's exactly what my kids would never be a part of. So it's my responsibility to make sure that they do not fall into that whole dynamic of these kids out here just running the streets with nothing to offer,
Right,
just a burden.
man. Look, you've done a great job, man. Showing up today, and I must say, like, all men that I've had on the Greatest of Men series, like with conversation, game, like you to me, you represent. I'm going in the right direction too.
That's what's up.
So and I think that we can all take each other to different audiences and get greater visibility with these conversations, and we can highlight great men along the way.
Right.
So would you like to leave the audience with some parting thoughts? I would like for you to. So I'm gonna put you up on the stage.
And what I'll say is be the father that your kids need you to be. Be present. They don't they value your time, energy, and effort more than anything that you could buy them. All they want is you. So just be the father they need you to be. If you
Okay.
want to purchase one of my books, go to my website. It's
Oh,
corwinmelvin.com.
Corwin. You said
corwinmelvin.com. Yeah,
uh,
that way I can get you a signed copy
yep,
of the book, and that's either one.
yep. So you see, everybody in the audience, you guys got it. CorwinMelvin.com, and you see both books are available here. I might have to get
And
with
at the
you.
bottom of that, you see there's a free giveaway there, um, for dads,
Oh, okay,
free
man.
download for dads.
Free download. I see it right
Hmm.
there, man. Look, I like the way you got things set up here. I'm learning something. You taught me something today for sure. So launch the author and
That's it.
man, CorwinMelvin.com. That's where you guys need to go. Hey man, you had a great show, man.
Hey, I
This.
appreciate it, man. Hey, if you want, I'm here and I'm.
Glad you made it this far. First thing I want you to do is go ahead and click subscribe. Make sure you like and share and support and subscribe to the notifications. Then when you get here, I want you to click the podcast link. You see that? Then I want you to go over there to where the arrows are pointing to the Beyond the Algorithm playlist and subscribe there. That way you get all of the updates. And now we'll continue. What was your initial reaction when you realized you'd be raising your children alone? That says child, but children. And how did it change your view of manhood or responsibility?
Well, for me, I never thought that I would ever not have my sons.
Hmm.
So I was always of the mindset that they were always going to be with me. Whether or not she was with me or not, they were always going to be with me. So it wasn't really a change. We never, my routine never changed. All the things that I did when we were a couple, I did when she was gone. I was the one that was doing a lot of the stuff with the daycare, a lot of stuff with school. I was the one that was doing all of these things. All my kids play sports. So we in and out of the gym every day. So I was the one already doing this stuff. So for me, it was actually easier because now I don't have to worry about what this other person is doing. Because all I could really count on was me. So now I don't have to wonder whatever else is going to be going on, or you're going to be available for this, or I need you to do that. I already knew it was all on me, so it just made it that much easier. And my sons were 4, 7, and 10 when I separated, so they were young. So you're talking about one in daycare, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and then just that whole transition through. Um, it was I don't want to say it was easy, but it felt pretty normal. So it didn't feel like I was doing anything special, and that's why the title of my book is Just a Dad, because I was just doing what I was supposed to do. It
Yeah,
was nothing special. It was just me being a father.
gotcha. Okay. I'm pulling up to the next question. You're going to see them pop up on the screen
Hmm.
as you see them.
Now I'm a little older than you now, so this font is kind of small.
Okay. That's why I'm reading it out to you. I already
I
saw you
appreciate
leaning back.
that.
I got you. So here's the question. What's been your biggest challenge as a single father, emotionally, financially, or socially?
um, Probably emotionally, because when you're dealing with three other humans, you're dealing with three different personalities. So you have to communicate three different ways because they don't all take your word the same way. So the challenge is, how do I relate to this person? This 4-year-old. How do I relate to this 7-year-old? How do I relate to this 10-year-old in a way that it's come across as loving, nurturing, caring, and still, maintaining discipline.
Awesome. I like that, man. That's let's see. Got another question, man. I got
Well,
you
I
on
can
the
touch
hot
the other
seat.
parts of that question too, if you want me to.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
This
So,
is your floor. This your floor, man.
okay. So financially, I've been pretty blessed. When they were young and I was going through all of the divorce stuff, I was still in the military. But once I got out the military, I've been blessed with the right jobs. So financially, it wasn't as big of a struggle. Even though I had three dudes, three kids. My two of my sons are 6'10". So you're talking about
You got some hoopers.
size 14, 15 tennis shoes every 3 months. So you're talking about all of these things. So like I said, my decision, the decision to go in the Air Force was the best decision I ever could have made. That recruiter, I owe that guy a debt of gratitude because he put me in a position, to be able to raise my sons, essentially by myself because, I was at a point where my ex didn't have to even pay child support, so it was all on me, you know.
Man,
Yeah,
look,
yeah. So then, that's just is what it was. So, and my thing is this: should no court or a judge have to tell you that you should support your kids? You know,
yeah.
you
Mhm.
know that that's your obligation. So nobody should have to tell you that. So that's a whole nother story. That's another book. How to deal with relationships with difficult people. And how to still come out of it sane with your sanity. And your emotionally intact and those kinds of things. But
Mhm.
so that's that was neither here nor there. It was kind of it's one of those things. If you don't provide anything for your children, then you don't have a voice in my house. You don't get to decide anything because you're not helping me do any of this stuff. So that
Yeah.
was that. And then
Come on.
socially, it's hard to date when you got three kids, so especially three young kids,
Put that in
so
perspective from a man's point of view to, like when we talk about single mother conversations, occupy a lot of the social media space, right? Talk from obviously from your point of view as a single father. What's dating like to so we can kind of compare the two, and so because I like compare and contrast.
right. So it's very similar. When you don't have time, you don't have time, whether you're the man or the woman. So dating is tough. But I knew that. That was a part of the part of the deal when I accepted that responsibility. So early on, I would tell people I met somebody, say, hey, I'm very busy. I have three kids. So I don't have a lot of time. So if you require a lot, then I'm probably not the person for you because I'm just not going to be available, and you need me to be available. So there was a big part of that where I wasn't, I didn't really date anybody really seriously. So I wasn't in any real long-term relationships, but so that's how that was, until later on when they got older and then I had more free time and then, they could do their thing and, they were older. But when they were young, yeah, I was just it's just tough, so it's the same as it is for single moms. It's tough when you have small kids, and especially if it's just you and small kids,
Yeah.
but that's just a part of it. That's a responsibility you accept, and you just make the most of it.
Okay. Well, man, I appreciate that right there. And move on to question two. How do you balance discipline and emotional connection as both protector and nurturer?
Well, the best part of discipline and the best way to manage discipline and your children is to start early. So you teach those lessons and those boundaries when they're 2, 3, and 4, then you don't have to slap them upside the head when they're 15, 16, 17. So you establish those lines.
Yeah.
You establish that you're always going to be their father. You're not going to be their friend. You're not going to be their buddy. You can love each other, you can hang out, and you can do things together, but there's a line that's always there. So you have to establish that line early so that they understand that, and then there's never a question later on. So a lot of times, I talk to a lot of single women or whatever with kids and with sons, and I tell them, say, all of those little things that you think are cute now are going to be cute when he's jumping out your window, or yelling at you or cussing you out, this, that, and the other. So you have to get them early. You have to, when they're in there 2, 3, and 4, and they're showing off, you got to get them, and we all know what that means. You got to get them early,
Yeah.
because you don't want to have to be standing face to face with this dude who is your size later on,
Right. And
so.
I was on a TikTok live earlier today, and guy had a prompt where it was talking about how come single father children raised by single fathers turn out to have less issues than was similar to the two parent home structure versus the single mother children. And one of the main issues that kept getting discussed was discipline. Um, but they were talking about discipline as a form of correction, whereas like discipline is a way that you think and live and move every day. You either disciplined or undisciplined in what you do. So
Right.
like when you have schedule, staying consistent, adherence to time, adherence to circumstance, maintaining your emotional composure. All of that is a form of discipline, or is a sign of disciplined thinking. So what you just said kind of captured everything that I was talking about earlier in that particular live. So man, hey, look, I know it's not even easy to do it either. So man, hats off to you, man. You
I
dead on.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
But
man.
yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, it's a learn when you haven't had that in your life, like I didn't have my father, you're learning together. I put in my book, me and my son, we kind of grew up together.
Yeah,
So he was like the experiment. I'm learning how to be a father, with him.
yeah.
So there are things that I know I didn't necessarily get right, but they were always done with love. So I always did the best that I could and made the best decisions I could make. Nobody is perfect, so you're gonna make mistakes, but as long as you make those mistakes, and if the foundation is me trying to be the best father I can be and do the best thing that I can do for you, and there's love behind it, then you can move on from those things. And they aren't damaging,
No.
because kids learn how to relate, how to communicate from you. So they learn how to deal in relationships from you. So if you're not a communicator and you're not talking through these things with them, who are they going to learn it from? How
Who
are they
are they
going to learn
going
how
to
to resolve these things and work through these things if they don't learn it from you? You much rather learn these lessons from you than out the street. So it's better to like I say, start early and then just be consistent.
Yep,
There's lessons in everything, good and
absolutely.
bad.
Question number 4. What's something you wish more people understood about single fathers, especially black or minority fathers?
We need a hug too. Sometimes we just want somebody to take us out to dinner. Sometimes we just want somebody to cook us dinner, because it's a struggle, just like it is for women. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of emotions that go into it. There's a lot of energy that goes into it. Sometimes you just want to be able to put your feet up, and relax. So to have somebody that allows you to do that, you relish those moments. You relish those moments.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can see that how that could be very impactful and very empowering if you got it. Because if
Yeah,
you're doing it, if you're making things happen without it, it should only help you when you get it.
absolutely,
All
absolutely,
right,
absolutely.
let's move on to question 5.
Mhm.
Have you faced any stereotypes or stigma of being a single dad? If so, how did you overcome them?
I don't know if I would say stereotypes, because I think it's really different from being a single dad and a single father. Single fathers are kind of like, praise. I get people say, "Oh, you're doing great. You're great. You're great. That's a great thing. You got your kids, this, that, and the other." It's like I'm doing this. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing whatever all these women out here do. There's nothing special about it. I'm just being a parent. So I think men tend to get praised for doing something that they should be doing anyway. You know.
Yeah, basic responsibility for what
Yeah,
you
just
signed
being
up
a
for.
being an adult. You're doing what an adult with kids is supposed to do.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. You just a dad, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's why my book is that title.
Hey,
I'm just a dad. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. What my mother
so,
did for me, my brother, my sister. You
right.
know, the best that she could do, and that's all I'm doing. That's all I did. It's the best that I can.
All right, folks. Appreciate you sticking with me to the end. This has been another episode of Beyond the Algorithm. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Go get the book. And most importantly, I will see you beyond the algorithm because that's where life actually happens.